Today, many in our churches are ready to do more to bring abuse into the light, but we need help to do that. At Grace, our multidisciplinary team of pastors, survivors, and experts have created our Safeguarding Certification Initiative to fill that need. Many church leaders are seeing the need to be more proactive in facing abuse and protecting the vulnerable. When we in the church are doing well, we have our staff and volunteers background checked, and we have them sign off that they've read our policy. And sometimes even we have them watch a training video. Those are good steps, but they're not enough on their own to overcome the depth of the problem of abuse in our churches and in Christian homes. Abuse is a systemic problem that will require much more than a Band-Aid solution. In the church, we need to shift our mentality in several key ways. Currently in churches, we tend to train staff and volunteers who work directly with kids, but everyone in the church is around the kids. We need to shift our mentality to training all adults and even children at an age-appropriate level. Currently in churches, we tend to focus on preventing abuse that might occur on the church property and in the structured ministry times. But abuse is just as, if not more likely to occur outside of the structured times of ministry, Sunday school, children's church, and in fact, most abuse occurs in homes. If we're not equipping our people with prevention tools to prevent abuse outside of the four walls of the church, we have a huge gap in our prevention efforts. Currently in churches, we tend also to focus on child sexual abuse, because that is where the liability is for institutions. But liability wasn't the focus for Jesus at all. Jesus' focus is on protecting the vulnerable sheep from the wolves in sheep's clothing who deceive and prey upon the vulnerable. Jesus didn't say one word about protecting the reputations of institutions or leaders. His sole focus was the protection of the vulnerable who are at the center of Jesus' ministry, his kingdom, and his church. And currently in churches, we tend to focus on child abuse, and rightfully so, but there are so many other prevalent forms of abuse in the church that require careful thought and proactive steps, such as clergy abuse in different forms, domestic violence or intimate partner violence, and adult sexual assault and harassment. These are just a few examples. And currently in churches, we tend to focus on the nuts and bolts of policy, which is critical, but we often ignore the deeper issues that would prevent adults from living our policy. Again, there are many types of deeper dynamics like these that leaders must address to make progress in abuse prevention and response. In short, we have a generation of work ahead of us. We need leaders and all adults to listen carefully to what Jesus said about the reality of abuse, learn from experts and research on abuse, and take responsibility to bring abuse into the light in local churches and ministries. In our Safeguarding Certification, we conduct in-person training at 3 levels, with leaders, with all adults, and with kids at an age-appropriate level. With leaders, we help you understand how God calls you to be proactive on abuse in 8 key areas. Leaders must ground abuse prevention in God's heart for the vulnerable. Lead frank discussions about the abuse of power in the church and in the home. Confront denial and call all adults and even kids to become educated at an age-appropriate level. Leaders must build a culture that believes and supports victims, holds offenders accountable, and calls all adults to own living the policy, including reporting abuse to local authorities and responding in other proactive ways in the wake of abuse. In our training for all adults, we walk through what every adult needs to know so that together we can live our policy well. All adults must take responsibility for preventing and responding to abuse when it does occur. Our adult training connects the issues surrounding abuse to a biblical foundation. We cover detailed practicalities of how children disclose abuse and how abusers groom victims. We cover the common dynamics of abuse to the prevalence of abuse and give practical guidance on loving survivors well, and of course, when and how to report abuse to local authorities. We have developed age-appropriate safety talks for kids in elementary school and for middle and high school youth. We can never put the main burden to protect kids on kids themselves, but we must teach kids key concepts at an age-appropriate level. What is abuse? What does the Bible say about it? And what's God's heart for those who have been abused? We need to teach kids that they are valuable and no one has the right to violate their space. Kids need to learn healthy boundaries themselves, what concerning behavior might look like from peers or adults, and what to do if someone is demonstrating concerning behavior or crossing boundaries with them. In addition to training and the initial certification, we do building safety consultation, where we walk through your ministry space and give you direct feedback on making a safe environment. The other major piece of the initial certification is policy development. We typically start with your child protection policy, and maybe you don't even have one yet. If you don't, we help you put together your first policy, or if you have a policy, we help you further it. And once that's implemented, we can then go on to implement further policy on other forms of abuse as well. In our churches and ministries, we cannot outsource protecting the vulnerable. All adults need to take ownership at the local level. At Grace, we are here to help you as you grow in your ability to understand, prevent, and respond to abuse. This is the work Jesus has called us to walk in the light with Him, exposing deeds of darkness and protecting the vulnerable. Thank you for all you are already doing to safeguard the vulnerable. Wherever you are in this journey, please reach out to us. In our Safeguarding Certification Initiative, we meet you where you are and take important steps together with our team who loves Jesus, loves His church, and have devoted years to helping Christians take steps forward in preventing and responding to abuse in Christian environments, whether you're a church, a Christian school, or other ministry. For more information or to get started, email us at certification@netgrace.org.